Okay, I think we can start the program. It is officially 5:30. So hello to everyone. My name is Eileen Wang, and I am a curator here at the Beach Museum of Art. Now, before we begin our program tonight, let me first say that K-State, as the first land-grant institution established under the 1862 Morrill Act, acknowledges that the state of Kansas is historically home to many native nations, including the Kaw, Osage, and Pawnee, among others. Furthermore, Kansas is the current home to 4 native nations: the Prairie Band Potawatomi, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, and Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri in Kansas and Nebraska. Many native nations utilize the Western Plains of Kansas as their hunting grounds, and others, such as the Delaware, were moved through this region during Indian removal efforts to make way for white settlers. It's important to acknowledge this, since the land that serves as the foundation of this institution was and still is stolen land. There might be some people in the audience who are primarily listening to this program and not using video. So whenever possible, I will briefly describe what's on the screen. I would describe myself as a woman of Chinese descent with straight, medium-length, dark brown hair. I am wearing a black and white jacket. Our guest tonight is acclaimed artist Renée Stout, who is streaming from Washington, D.C., and we are very excited and honored for her to be here today. Renée, would you describe yourself briefly?
Yes, I'm a short, very short, 4 feet 11 inches, African-American woman with brown skin and shoulder-length dreadlocks, and I wear big black rimmed glasses, and I love earrings.
Me too. Thank you, Renée. Renée was born in Junction City, Kansas, and she grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Carnegie Mellon University. And she moved to Washington, D.C. in 1985 and is based there now. Living in D.C., Renée started exploring her African-American heritage in her works. And she also drew inspiration from what she observed and experienced in city life. Renée has received many awards and recognition for her work. One distinction is being the first American artist to have works displayed at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art. She's also the winner of many awards, prominently from the Pollock Krasner Foundation, the Joan Mitchell Foundation, and the Louis Comfort Tiffany Foundation. Her works are in the permanent collections of prestigious institutions, such as the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, also in D.C., National Museum of African American History and Culture in D.C., and here in Kansas, Renée's work is in the Spencer Museum of Art at KU, University of Kansas, the Ulrich Museum of Wichita State University, and in Kansas City, the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art and the Belger Art Center. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start our program by discussing a couple of your works in our permanent collection. This is Church of the Crossroads as it is currently installed, part of the Inside Out project that the museum has going on right now. The building is closed, so we have works of art on display on our windows. So you can walk around the museum and see an exhibition. There's a yard sign actually right below that. It got cropped out from the photo, which has more information on the work. It has a picture of you, Renée, and people can get additional info by using the visual scanning app, Smartify, to get more information, including a quote from you, what you wrote about Church of the Crossroads.
Okay.
So let's start with this, Renée. What would you tell someone who is unfamiliar about art about this work, Church of the Crossroads?
Well, you made me have to start out talking about one of the most difficult ones to explain. In West African culture, there's the concept of the crossroads, but people of all cultures have this concept where you talk about being at a crossroads, and usually that means being at a place in your life where you have to make a decision. But in the West African culture, that's a very important place to be, because what they believe is that if you literally go to a place where two roads cross, that is like a sort of a vortex or a place where you can actually stand there at these crossroads, and the mortal plane meets with the spiritual plane, and you can ask your ancestors for guidance. If you need, you're about to make an important decision in your life, you may go leave an offerings at that crossroads, and that's where, your ancestors could come and, sort of guide you. Well, when you go to one of these crossroads, sometimes what you'll find is a mound of sometimes cement or a dirt mound that has cowrie shell eyes. And this figure represents Legba, who's the guardian of the crossroads. So it's like maybe, who's it? Gabriel's the guardian of the gates in Catholicism and or in Christianity or whatever. But he would be the deity that you would sort of help you intersect with your ancestors, with the spiritual world. So what I've done is in neon created this Elegba, this outline of this Elegba figure, and I'm calling it the Church of the Crossroads.
Now, some students that I've worked with in the past have commented that they thought of the KKK hood when they saw this figure of Elegba.
Yes.
Now, was this a possible meaning that you had thought of as well?
Not at all. And that's not the first time that came up. This was in another exhibition, and somebody asked me, was that another meaning of the piece? And it wasn't at all. And I think it's because of the way it's rendered in white, which, normally it's a clay figure, but to see it rendered in white like this, and because that KKK hood is such an iconic image in American history, I think people who are unfamiliar with the concept of the crossroads and Legba in West African religion and theology would not recognize this. They're going to immediately go to the thing that they associate this shape most with, and that's a KKK hood,
Yeah, and I've been dying to ask you this. There's a cross at the top of the head.
Yes.
I've looked at pictures of Elegba traditional, figures. It doesn't look like there's a cross. Is this something that you added?
Yes, it is. There never is. And if you've looked at enough of them, there's usually something like a little blade coming out of the head.
Mm-hmm.
And
Next slide, please, John. We can show that.
Yeah, there's usually a little blade coming out of the head. Sometimes I've seen feathers. Yeah, the blade is in that picture. But what I decided to do is, because I was dealing with Legba and the crossroads, I literally put a cross on top of the head that represents the crossroads. So whenever you see a cross turn up in my work, very rarely is it a Christian cross. It's referring to being at a crossroads.
Oh, that's really good to know. Yeah, that was a burning question for me.
Yes, because even in the images that we're looking at right now, if you look at the one on the left, there's a cross suspended from the branch.
Yep.
It represents the crossroads, and there's a little key dangling from that, which means you'll find the answers. The key represents finding answers and opening doors.
Amazing. Okay, next slide, please, John. Okay, let's talk about another work in our collection. It's I Can Heal. Another neon sculpture, but also has bottles and figures that go with it. And John, could you please show the video? We'll watch the video together, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay.
Conjure, the manipulation of supernatural forces using charms, roots, inanimate, and handmade articles. Voodoo, old Southern term for hexing and spell casting, sometimes used interchangeably with voodoo, from which it probably derives, or from juju, a term for African magic. Mojo, a term used in Southern Voodoo in a variety of ways. In strictest usage, the bone of a black cat used in hexing. This is to make people love you. This is the recipe. Take 9 lumps of starch, 9 of sugar, 9 tablespoons of steel dust. Wet it all with Jockey Club cologne. Take 9 pieces of ribbon, blue, red, or yellow. Take a dessert spoonful and put it on a piece of ribbon and tie it in a bag. Same day, when Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude sat on the shore. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprang up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Ogun is the Orisha of war and metal, syncretized with Saint Anthony or Saint George and the planet Mars, Ogun or Ogum in Santeria. As each fold is gathered together, call his name. As you wrap it with yellow thread, call his name till you finish. Make 9 bags and place each of them under a rug, behind an armoire, under a step, or over a door. They will love you and give you everything they can get. Distance makes no difference. Your mind is talking to his mind, and nothing beats that.
That is just an amazing video.
Thank you.
So, you know, when we talked about having you come to speak, you sent me that video to add into the program. Why did you do that?
Because I felt like it would help the audience understand this character that I had created that is a root worker, a seer. And, you know, before I didn't do performance. I don't do performance. I've told you before that I'm an introvert. So I'm pretty much in my studio doing what I do. But when I had this exhibition that this video was created for at the Halsey Institute, Mark Sloan, who was the director and the curator at the Halsey Museum, got these two filmmakers to come to my studio. And what he thought he was going to get was one of those regular talking head videos where you see the artist in their studio moving about, talking about the work, you know, pretending to paint on something. And these were two young filmmakers, and we got really mischievous, and we're like, we're not going to do that. And they said, well, what would you like to do? And I'm like, I would love to be able to act out my alter ego, who is Fatima Mayfield, the root worker, seer, fortune teller. And so the three of us sat in my studio and hatched this plan to create this video, which I felt extended sort of the work that was already in the show, the paintings, the drawings, the sculpture, and then you added this component of this video. And I think that it really helps to pull everything together.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And we actually have a new work by you that features Fatima Mayfield. We can show that later.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask you, why has hoodoo spiritual practices been such a fertile source of inspiration for you?
Because, you know, being an African-American woman, when I was young, of course, I was raised in Christianity because I'm American.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to, you know, I've always questioned things. And I think that, you know, I saw when I was a child in Pittsburgh, I would go to Saturday art classes at the Carnegie Museum. And they had several African pieces, and among them were these works called Menkisi. And if, you know, people may not know them by that name, but they're called power figures. Some people may know them by fetishes. And they were these figures, carved wooden figures that had nails driven into them. And I saw one of those at 10 years old, and it stuck in my mind. And I was so curious about it. But, you know, I didn't have any information because back then Carnegie Museum didn't have extensive information posted for them. So I just visually saw the thing and really responded to it. But when I moved to the Washington, D.C. in 1985, they had the wonderful Smithsonian Museum of African Art here. And when I walked in and saw this wealth of information and you know, remembered that same Menkisi piece that I saw in Pittsburgh and how they had several in the Museum of African Art with all this extensive information, it really made me start to want to look into my own African-American heritage and look at these spiritual aspects and, you know, the philosophy behind these spiritual objects. And so I think it's really just trying to get in touch with who my ancestors were and what their spiritual beliefs were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And tap into how they look at the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, how to cope with the things that happen. The world is different.
You're absolutely right, because, you know, people don't realize, you know, the Africans who were enslaved had their own way of the way they viewed the world and made sense of the world snatched away from them when they were brought here, which has rippling effects down through all these generations, which we still see now. When you're ripped from your heritage and everything that makes sense about the world to you, you suffer a certain kind of dysfunction that just ripples down through the generations. And I think what I was doing was saying, okay, let me close the gap. Let me find the missing pieces to help make sense of the world for me. And so I would say my whole career, this is what I've been doing.
Yeah, and that makes for great art. Okay, so what I think I'll do, because time flies when we have fun. Right. John, can you scroll through the slides of Renee's home and studio, and then Renee maybe pick one slide and just say something about.
Okay, I'll pick this one.
Okay.
There's a room in my house that went, you know, I live in it was built in 1905, and it's a 3-story Victorian brick house, and it's very old. And when I got here, I painted some rooms, but I left this one room on the second floor, the color that it was when I moved into the house. And the house is like, it's a fixer-upper, so it's still in disrepair. And as an artist, I don't have all that money to go totally renovate, so I got to do little things at a time. But this room is sort of raw and still like the house originally was when I found it. And I decided to create an ongoing installation in this room that became a room for my alter ego. It's almost like it's her space. And so I started filling it with spiritual objects from around the world, a lot of African masks. Some I've taken down, but you know, it's like all kinds of things are all over every wall. And it's actually the guest room as well. But when it's warmer out, I sleep in this room. And what I've found is that waking up, looking at these things and laying in the bed, looking around, I get so many ideas from being in this room. And it's such a peaceful, it's like a cocoon. So I felt like I needed to show this because a lot of inspiration comes from this room.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So John, maybe just scroll through quickly to the other slides. We can just show quickly. Mm-hmm. And then let's stop at the slide with the hoodoo assassin one. Mm-hmm. Keep going. There. Oh, yeah. Go back one.
Yeah.
There. Mm-hmm. So this is Fatima Mayfield, isn't it?
No, it's actually, I have constructed this whole alternative universe, this whole parallel, I call it the parallel universe. And, you know, way before the 2016 election, you know, I'm very empathic, I'm very perceptive, I'm a abstract thinker. You give me a bit of information, I'm going to plug it in, and I'm taking this information and see a bigger picture. It's just the way I think. And way before we ended up where we are now, socially and politically, I felt it coming. Mm. And so, you know, it was very frustrating for me because I would express my concerns and people would be like, oh, you know, you're being dramatic, oh, blah, 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 you know, but I knew I wasn't. So in order for me to kind of calm myself, I had to create a way for my, you know, at least my imagination to escape. So I constructed an alternate universe or parallel universe. And in my mind, I can escape to that parallel universe. I see it in my head. I started creating characters that would inhabit this parallel universe. And I wanted to protect that parallel universe. So I started creating these assassins that would make sure that my parallel universe wasn't contaminated by what's going on in this one. So I have whole systems that protect my parallel universe. And she's one of the hoodoo assassins. And she is a specialist in herbs, especially poisonous ones.
Yeah, and there's your root collection on the left over there.
Exactly, yeah.
Your picture of your root collection.
Right, right.
John, can we,
on paper.
Yeah, can we advance to the next slide? Oh. So this is your parallel, Guardians of the Parallel Universe.
Guardians of the Parallel Universe. So you can see we're in space now. We're headed to the parallel universe. And these figures that you see all around are figures that would be like everything that in America and in Western culture you've been taught to be afraid of. And like in African cultures, the snake represents the messenger of the ancestors in a lot of African cultures. So we wouldn't be afraid of snakes. That wouldn't be, but Christianity teaches you to be afraid of snakes. So what I've done is inverted all the things that we're supposed to be afraid of and turned them into the things that are my parallel universe. So you see this is a caricature of what they used to, you know, this dancing jigaboo figure down in the lower right corner. You know, they used to caricature Black people with that. And I took it and I'm like, okay, well then I'm going to make that the guardian of my universe, you know. Yeah. There's a voodoo doll up at the top, you know. So they're the guardians, and then we're headed to the parallel universe.
Nice. Okay, the last slide. Next slide, please. I know you want to talk about this. You finished this just a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, just about 3 weeks ago. And this is called La Boisseau, was invoked to quell the beast. And this is taking imagery from Haitian Voodoo. And La Boisseau is like, it's represented, I have a voodoo flag in that room that I was showing you, the room that I sleep in. I have about 4 voodoo flags. and they're designed to call the spirits down when they're having ceremonies. And one of them is a bull, and it's called La Boisseau, and La Boisseau represents the fighting spirit. So La Boisseau is evoked at times of war and conflict, which is what I feel we're in now. So I wake up looking at this flag and I'm like, I get this idea for this painting. And so what's happening is, you know, the beast is the thing that we're fighting right now. We're fighting for people to have rights. There's this whole machine in place right now that, you know, people who want to see, you know, equality and justice are fighting against this thing that is in place that we have to kind of join together. And so I represent the people who are trying to achieve this as the neon heart. That's humanity. La Boisseau is our fighting spirit. The skulls in the fog are our ancestors and the spirits that come before us that want to see the world move forward and advance. And the beast, which is represented by this, you know, head with dollar signs on it, which is what's driving, you know, a lot of like control and greed. Well, that represents the beast. So if you see the triangle that I've made, there's a faint triangle between humanity, the fighting spirit, and the ancestors are all joining forces to quell the beast. And so on the side, I wrote, defeat the beast in 2020. So, so that's my way of venting.
Oh, that's amazing. This is a spell. It's a visual spell.
You know what? It actually, you are exactly right. It's a spell diagram.
We need it. Thank you for making this. All right. Well, I will open up the floor to questions from people. So audience, please click on raise your hand and our moderator will we'll unmute you in turn. I'll give you guys like 5 minutes and you know, to ask questions.
No question is stupid. So if you have a question, just ask it.
Hi, Eileen.
Hi, Linda.
Such a great program, Ms. Stout. We're really honored to have this. My question is just about, you know, you've talked a lot about your work and using it to explore and kind of reconstruct your African heritage as an African American. But it's always really struck me as a white woman that your work is very meaningful to me too. And I just wonder how, you know, what kind of thoughts you have about this work speaking much more broadly, you know, to a very human audience across the spectrum.
You know, that is my intent, because I think that the things that I'm addressing, even though I'm doing it from the point of view of an African-American woman, what I'm addressing are universal issues. And when I put something out into the world, like I create a painting, I don't want it to be for a limited audience. I'm trying to speak to as many people as possible. And the fact that it resonates with you means that I've achieved what I was trying to do. That on some level, as a human being, we've connected.
I love hearing that. And I just want to say that when I first came to the Beach Museum of Art to interview for my position there 9 years ago, and I saw I Can Heal, it's one of the things that made me realize that I wanted to come there. I was just so moved by that piece.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, it's like when you say, when I make a statement like I can heal, that is really when I feel like I'm trying to be as universal as possible. You know, who among us doesn't want to see, you know, healing going on, whether it's personally, in our families, in our country, and the world in general. It's such a simple statement, but it's a broad statement that I think resonates with everybody.
And if I could just say one more thing, one of the things that really struck me about it was the kind of double nature of the language, because the visual eye was a picture of an eye, a human eye. and it made me feel like art, you know, the art of the visual also has the capacity to heal. The things we
Exactly. I could, yeah,
see can
yeah.
heal us.
Well, you know, it's like an eye is one of those universal symbols, like a heart, a hand. There are these things that are universal symbols. And when I use eyes a lot, hearts, hands, and because you, like you said, that eye, people will bring to an, you know, that, you know, the shape of an eye, like what you just said, you felt like it meant art, you know, visually, you know, seeing things. And sometimes I use it to say, you know, the spirits or the ancestors, people came before us are watching us and the choices that we make and what we're doing and how we're acting as human beings in the world.
Well, I'm just gonna read some, there are a couple of questions in the question and answer portion. So there's one from Sylvia Rohr. Hello from Pittsburgh. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. You left Pittsburgh quite a while ago. I am curious, how much of your Pittsburgh background do you still carry in your practice?
You know, Pittsburgh is deep in me. It will always be there because when I left, I was 25 years old. So it pretty much formed the person that I am, even though I've been in DC now longer than I was in Pittsburgh. But there's my experience growing up in Pittsburgh was really, it was good for me because, you know, by the time I left Pittsburgh, which was 1985, in 1984 and 1985, those 2 years, Pittsburgh was voted the most livable city. And that at that time, it really was in many ways. But, you know, there were so many experiences I had growing up there that I think that I can't even imagine growing up anywhere else. I think that it was a good place to be. There are a lot of talented people there. A lot of musicians and artists came from Pittsburgh. So it's going to always be with me. I'm a Pittsburgher at heart. I'm not a DC person. I can't claim that, you know, I'm still a Pittsburgher.
We have a question from someone from Junction City, actually one of my colleagues. So she was saying, do you still have connections in Junction City? We'd love to have you back to spread your message.
Oh my God, you know, somebody interviewed me from Junction City about 2 weeks ago for a show that I'm in at the Halsey Institute in Charleston. And she was a reporter from the newspaper in Junction City. And she wasn't aware that I had left Junction City so early. My father was stationed in the Army at Fort Riley. And back then it was between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And they only, you know, each male, American male, had to do 2 years in the Army. And that's when he did his 2 years. And that was in Fort Riley. So I was born when he and my mother were down there while he was in the Army. So I have no knowledge of Junction City, you know, and the only other contact that I've had with it is me, my sister, and my cousins were driving across the country one day, and we decided to take the central route that would go through Kansas. And I made them stop in Junction City so I could call my mother on a payphone and tell her where I was, because this was pre-cell phone days. So I called her from a payphone and said, guess where I am? And I was in Junction City. So we just drove through the town and then drove out. So I haven't been there since.
Well, maybe come visit us. We'll take you for a tour.
Okay.
Someone from Alabama, Penny Weaver, is saying hello and thanks very much for this fascinating presentation. And actually, Ksenia, who is the curator at the Ulrich Museum of Art, she's asking, how do you think about the way that the spiritual systems you explore blur the line between physical health and psychological or spiritual health?
Well, I could speak from that from a personal level. I feel that the way I believe spiritually keeps me healthy in a certain kind of way, because I feel that if I didn't have the spiritual connections I have, and it's not religion, it's spiritual, you know, and I thank my mother and father all the time that they didn't force me to believe in religion in a certain kind of way. They made it clear that there was something bigger than me. They may have spoken of God, but they didn't define it. So it allowed me to become not a religious person, but a spiritual person, to feel like I'm connected to the universe, to nature, to everything. So that's the way I feel all the time. You know, I feel like I'm connected to everything. And so I feel that that is what's helping me get through a lot of the things that are going on right now, because I think that if I didn't have that, I'd probably be in the hospital. You know, it's like, you know, this stuff gets to me. I'm a really sensitive person, you know. And so I think it's my spiritual connections to the universe that I do believe that when people have that, it does help you through.
Yes. John, do you want to unmute somebody who wants to ask live?
Sarah Lynn Reese Hardy, you have a question.
Oh, I did. I was just sitting here trying to type it in. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Sarah Lynn. Thanks for joining us.
And Eileen and Linda, thank you so much for doing this. And Renee, I'm at the Spencer Museum, and I was so impressed to see all of the institutions surrounding us. All of us have your work. It's so exciting.
Let me tell you, it's like, it's what brings me joy is the fact that even though my time in Kansas was so limited, that the state seems to have embraced me and likes my art. And you just don't know what that means to me, that, you know, all these institutions have been so supportive over the years. It's just amazing. And I have to thank you for that. It's just great.
Well, we all claim you, and I'm excited. I'm excited to be in such good claiming company. But I did want to comment on something and ask a question. I'm so impressed by your artistic flexibility and adaptability, and the way that you turn to different materials and different means of expressing your vision and your, I'm even going to use the word ideals because I want to hear that word out loud right now. Your ideals through video, through collage, through drawing, through all of these different methods. And I'm just wondering if you can address what you think that means in terms of art of the future, because I actually do think I'm posing a proposition that the way you work is actually the way that all of us need to start working. Adaptability of method in the service of a purpose.
You know, yes, I agree, because, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and it, in some weird way, it has sometimes hampered my career because, you know, galleries are about, you know, marketing and selling things. And when you don't fit neatly inside of a box for them to be able to brand or market, they don't know what to do with you, you know. But I can't help working this way. I've always worked this way. If you were to go back and talk to college professors, they would tell you that I've always done this. And it's just my way. It's just, I'm so interested in so many different media that I have to express myself. And what happens is, if I get an idea and I wake up and I say, this is what I want to express, sometimes there's a certain media that I can do that best in, you know, whether it's a drawing, whether it's a painting. So I could not, you know, I can't rein myself in and say, I'm only going to be a painter, or I'm only going to be a sculptor. This is the way that I've always had to express myself. And what I've found that recently, there are universities that are starting to actually make classes that are about dealing with multimedia. So they are starting to figure out that there are people that create this way, or that maybe artists need to be allowed to be, you know, to create this way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and actually there's a related question, and this is from Casey Messick-Braun, and she's curator of African art actually at the Spencer Museum. So she said, given the current conversations that frame COVID-19 and systemic racism as global health crises, how do you think your work can contribute to these dialogues?
I think that my work has a lot to contribute to the dialogue. I think where the problem is happening is that because the current art world is structured such that it is, my work is not the work that's actually getting looked at and promoted on a certain level where it would be highly visible. Because I do address so many things that I think people need to hear about, need to be talking about, but I don't think that the art world itself has enough of the language or enough of the desire to look at the things that I'm saying and doing to sort of make that connection between the spiritual and the, you know, where we're going right now socially, and what art needs to actually be seen at this time. There are so many artists that are doing things that really need to be seen, you know, on the same level that other things are, you know, are being seen right now, but it's not.
And you think it's because it's a, you know, kind of more difficult material, and so it's not commercial?
It's not, yes, it's more difficult. It's more, you know, it's not the cute one-liner that you just get by looking at it one
Yeah.
time. You know, there might be multi-layers. And it's like, if galleries can't sell it easily to a collector, sometimes they don't want to be bothered with it, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I know we're actually running overtime, so I apologize to all the people that I couldn't get your questions to Renee, and people who wanted to ask in person who couldn't. If you want to, you can type it in the chat, and we actually have a transcript, and we'll send that to Renee, you know, any comments you want Renee to see. So I think that I should conclude our program. And just a few things that I want to go over. And Renee, thank you so much for this
Thank you.
fantastic
Thank you.
conversation. I mean, it's just so much fun.
Thank you.
I want to say happy birthday to Anna Montgomery, who is my dear friend and scuba diving buddy.
Happy
And
birthday.
she's tuning in all the way from Hawaii. So
Wow.
happy birthday, Anna. And before you go, everyone, you know, we will stay on a little bit so you can type in comments for Renee in the chat function. And please leave us feedback, you know, about this program. We want to hear from you. And if you'd like to receive our monthly email alert for our newsletter, please leave your request also in the chat, and we'll see it in the transcript. Everyone, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, where we have videos of other artists in conversation and also virtual tours of exhibitions. And we need 100 subscribers so that we can get our custom URL. So yeah, please help us. And next month, we have another Let's Talk Art program with textile artist China Marks. So please tune in for that. And thank you, everyone. So I will say a formal goodbye to everyone now. But we'll stay on a few minutes for you to put in comments in the chat and, you know, maybe talk to Renee. But thank you, everyone, for
Thank you.
for coming here.